In this video, I'm going to go through how to complete a 6-column worksheet using this example for Spruce Ridge Golf Club. You can see here I've been given a trial balance that is already in balance, and that needs to be your starting point for a worksheet is a balancing trial balance. If your trial balance does not balance, that would be a good indication that you need to go back and look for your mistake. The other important information that we are given here is the dating format. A 6-column worksheet includes a trial balance, an income statement, and a balance sheet. And because it has an income statement, we're going to date the worksheet the same way we would date an income statement, and that's for the period ending or period ended. In this case, the month ended September 30th of the appropriate year. So moving over to my 6-column worksheet. There it is. Hey, you'll see that I've had my 3-line title in the regular order. So who, the name of the business, followed by what we're making them a worksheet, followed by the when, and that's the date for the month ended. And we do it that way because there's an income statement on this particular one. For both a trial balance and a balance sheet, September 30th would be the appropriate date. Then I filled in my account titles going down the left-hand side here in the same order that they were on the previous trial balance, and I'm copying them into the trial balance columns here. So basically, I'm recreating that trial balance on this particular statement. This is an informal one, so I can use short forms on here. A worksheet, unlike a trial balance and other statements, does not require dollar signs. You'll also notice that I put a single underline because I added both columns, and then double underlines to indicate the final totals on the trial balance columns. So once you've copied those over, our next step is to copy the numbers and their balances to the correct statement. So every item listed here is either going to belong on a balance sheet or an income statement. So it's only going to belong on one of those statements, not both. So one of the first things that we would do here is to find out where the divider is. Remember, our trial balance is in order: assets, liabilities, capital, drawings, revenue, and expenses. And each one of those items only appears on one statement. Because they're in order, we can look at this and see between drawings and fees earned being our revenue, that everything above this red line that I've drawn in here after drawings would go on the balance sheet, and everything below our revenues and expenses goes on the income statement. So now that I've put those in there, I'm going to go through and I'm going to copy those numbers. Cash is an asset, belongs on the balance sheet. It had a debit balance, so I'm going to write it in the debit column of the balance sheet section. Supplies had a debit balance. Land had a debit balance. Equipment had a debit balance. Our accounts payable and bank loan are both liabilities with credit balances, so I would write those in the credit column of our balance sheet. And then our drawings is the last one, and it would go in the debit column of the balance sheet. A common error is to include drawings on the income statement, and if you do that, that would be incorrect. So this drawings would be the last number. Now our membership fees are revenue. Revenues belong on the income statement, so again, I'm going to keep that a credit balance as it was in the trial balance, but I'm copying it in this case to the income statement. Our salaries expense was a $50,000 debit. Our maintenance expense is a $2,000 debit, $7,000 for utilities expense, and $2,000 for our office expense. So now that I've copied all the numbers over, my next step is to draw a single underline, and I'm going to add up each one of those 4 columns independently. So adding up the debit column here would give me $61,000. Carrying down the credit number, there's only one, so I'm adding it to itself, $110,000. Adding up the debit column of my balance sheet gives me $244,000. And adding up the credit column of my balance sheet gives me $195,000. So at this point, you'll notice that all 4 of these numbers are different, and that's okay, even though we know that we're supposed to balance. So in order to balance, we're going to look at the income statement first. So if we remember the income statement here, our credit column is our revenues. So if you imagine making an income statement, your total revenues would be $110,000 and your total expenses would be $61,000. Your next step on an income statement would be to take your revenues and subtract your expenses to figure out your net income or net loss. In this case, our revenues were $110,000, our expenses were $61,000, so we're going to have a net income, and then we're going to have a net income of $49,000. Because it's a net income, I'm going to write that over on this heading over at the side, net income. And you'll notice that I skipped a line so that this net income is on the same line as the number that it represents. I'm going to do the same thing over on the right side. I'm going to take my debit column for my balance sheet, $244,000, and subtract $195,000, and you'll notice that also gives me $49,000. This should give you the same number. Now, the reason our balance sheet doesn't balance is we have not yet calculated our new capital. So if you remember, you would do an income statement first, figure out your net income or net loss, and then on your report form balance sheet, you would take your old capital, you would subtract your drawings, and you would either add or subtract your net income or net loss. So in this case, that's why we're including the net income on the credit side, because it will increase the capital. Now I'm going to draw a single underline all the way across. And I'm going to show that all the pairs of columns balance, just like I did with the trial balance. So $61,000 plus $49,000 gives me $110,000. $110,000 plus nothing gives me $110,000. $244,000 plus 0 gives me $244,000. Essentially carrying that number down, and then $195,000 plus $49,000 gives me $244,000. Those are my final totals, so I'm going to write a nice straight set of double underlines below those. So you'll notice at this point that we have 3 different pairs of balancing numbers. Okay, so at the end of your statement here, your worksheet, your debit and credit under trial balance should be equal to each other. Your debit and credit under income statement should be equal to each other. And your balance sheet, debit and credit should be equal to each other. So we have 3 pairs of matching numbers. So this is what a completed 6-column worksheet would look like.